No one has ever shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming.
We have a massive power, and it's the power to say no.
They put all these words on these flyers and it means nothing. It's garbage.
We're all going to die!
Doctors are gaslighting patients.
If you keep silent, then this is what's going to happen. And they'll make us silent.
I would rather paper cut my eyelids than have anything to do with those
I
blokes.
love that saying.
We are one people, one flag, one Australia.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the XCandidates. My name is Stephen Tripp, joined by two of my good friends tonight, which is always a good thing. But firstly, Adam Zara, how are you going today?
I'm pretty good, Stephen. How you going, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, Adam. Now, what's been happening in your world out in Campbelltown? We don't talk about we haven't talked about Campbelltown too much lately. How's the cost of living and everything going on out there?
Cost of living is, on the rise. It should be the cost of good times should be on the rise, but unfortunately, the cost of living's on the rise. So I think we did get a reprieve for petrol recently. So it came down. I was able to buy petrol for under $2 a litre, which was pretty crazy. I mean, just under $2. I'm talking like $1.99.9, but it's still, you kind of like, it's better than $2.60 a litre, I reckon. So
I remember back in the day when petrol first went to $1 a litre and everyone was losing their minds. It's like, oh my God, how can it be $1 a litre? Now it's well over that too. It's like, it's nuts.
Bring back the days of 86 cents a litre. I remember I used to have my cars and you fill them up for $60. It was just wicked. And then, and you got to think about it too, right? Like cheap fuel, it's a cheap energy source. And what happens is it keeps the cost of living and everything down anyway, because you're not paying for those extra fees and charges, in deliveries. And, think about farmers running generators and pumps and all the diesel fuel they have to use, and think about all those kind of things. All that adds up, when it goes up doubles and triples in price, from the 90s, and we're talking only, 15, 20 years of exorbitant price rises in fuel. I mean, it's in the ground. It hasn't really changed. I don't understand why we have such more upward pressure on fuel prices. I guess taxes and excise taxes and things like that all come into play. But anyway, so cost of living in Campbelltown's, pretty high. I'd like to actually do a little bit of a shout out if I could, fellas. I'd like to do a bit of a shout out to a local Campbelltown girl, Nicole Pastor. She's, breaking her way into the acting world, and they just had a release of another movie that she was in called Christmas, actually, and it's kind of like an Australian take on Bad Santa, but talking about Campbelltown, it was filmed out here, and it was really good to see, local places and quite good actors in there as well. So it was a pretty good movie, and I think it was something that I think if you get a chance to support the Australian film industry, this is a really good one to start with. So Nicole Pastor, a big shout out to you, saying good on you and keep up the hard work. And I'm sure you've got bigger and better things coming. But Christmas, it was a great movie filmed locally, and I think everybody should watch that one.
Yeah, very good. And we encourage everyone also to jump over to Buy Me a Coffee as well if you want to give Adam and I a little special thanks. It's just there for anyone that wants to contribute. And as I say every week, it blows my mind that people want to part with their hard-earned money, especially in a cost of living crisis, just to say thanks to Adam and I. But that option is there if you choose. Remember, it is XCandidates now, not the EX candidates. We got rid of the E, so it's just the XCandidates. On Buy Me a Coffee, you can head there. But I think tonight's going to be a lot of fun because we have Paul Vallejo returning. Now, Paul joined us in the past. So we've had him on previously once when we were talking about nuclear energy, but he's also joined us as a co-host with Dr. Peter McCullough, Nikolai Petrosky, also recently with Chris Martinson. So it's always fantastic having Paul with us. So that's why I enjoy having Paul on, because not only did I spend all day with him today as well, you always feel like in the amount of time you have with Paul, you still haven't had the time to discuss everything you want to discuss because you just want to pick his brain about everything. But Paul, we've introduced you in the past. You want to just give everyone that may not have heard you before just a quick background of who you are, like your time at NASA and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. It's been a wandering road. I grew up in New York. My first degree at uni, my first major was nuclear engineering. I customized that degree into an engineering science degree that included aerospace and a little bit of astrophysics. I worked 10 years at NASA in a few different divisions, avionics, systems engineering, and information systems. And then had a couple of winding roads, did some teaching. I got 2 master's degrees in behavioral science and economics, one of them at Sydney Uni. Moved to Australia permanently in 2012 and became a citizen maybe 5 years later. Yeah, it's been a wandering road, but for a very curious person like myself, it's kind of the way I enjoyed it. It's been I'm very grateful for every twist and turn, even if some of them were unexpected.
Now, we consider you to be the nuclear guru on this show. I know the UAP also called upon your services at the federal election. Why is that? Like, why are you... Where does your knowledge around nuclear energy come from?
Yeah, well, there's one saying, in a blind world, the one-eyed man is king. So, given that Australia has banned nuclear energy for a few decades, the person who's taken a few nuclear engineering courses and used some of that knowledge during an engineering career, may pass as a rare source in the location. So, it's not like I designed nuclear reactors for subs or spent a long time in the industry. But I'm quite familiar with the basics, and also because I have a large curiosity about the topic of energy and energy policy and the basic physics behind things, I help out where I can, and that's where we'll start.
Paul, so I mean, obviously, I know you worked for NASA now, so that's I don't know if it's a private agency or a governmental agency, but I know it's all linked. So just quickly, obviously our streams on our social medias and stuff like that are filled with conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So what do the real photos of the Earth look like with undoctored?
Geez. We've had plenty of Earth-facing satellites and missions that have gone out into deeper space. What are the real ones? Actually, how about this as a little bit of a turn? Have you ever seen the poles of Saturn? The North Pole and the South Pole. The picture came out as really, really strange. They did a polar flyby of Saturn, and the cloud formations are hexagons. Now, I have no idea, because you'd figure everything would be circular, but if you pull that up, and maybe you'll get a chance to sort of pull it up in real time, they're a hexagonal formation on the North and South Pole of Saturn. Now, I have no idea what the physics behind something like that might be, or if whoever is rendering our simulation kind of had a little bit of an oversight in terms of the picture on the top left there, that hexagonal formation. Yes. Yeah. And now, how on earth that happens? I have a high curiosity, but I don't know if anyone's figured that out. Or like I said, maybe it's the whoever's in charge of the simulation, just clicked on the wrong polygon to make our because you're like, oh, no one's ever going to look at that, so we're not going to double check what that looks like.
Well, this is what I'm kind of alluding to, is like they're getting a bit lazy now, with their doctoring their photos. Like you get a picture of, I don't know how true or real or that not they are. It's just stuff that comes up on feeds and things like that. And I've used them as sources before, I guess, and get some great knowledge from some of these places. With a grain of salt too. So you got to always we just don't take it as fact. You got to look into it a bit as well. But you get a photo of the Earth. So when you look up at the sky, in any direction, there's stars everywhere. And then you'll see, the astronauts on the moon, and they'll take a photo of the planet Earth, and there's not one star behind it. Is there any explanation behind any of that?
Anytime you take a picture with a very bright foreground, you're not going to see faint objects in the background. But you're kind of getting, to one interesting part, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this in the past, but particularly recently, is the branch of philosophy of epistemology, which is how you know what you know. And these days, I think it's very disorienting because there are a lot of people who are sure of stuff, and then a lot of other people who are sure of something quite the opposite. We exist in a narrative world where the news media, everyone thinks their news media is feeding them the truth, and the other person's news media is feeding them bullshit, right? Yeah. And so you have people who live in completely different universes, sure of what they believe, and then the question is, how do we know we're not the ones who are being fooled? And how do we persuade others when they will, not question their sources?
What did you call that theory? What was it? The epistemology of
epistemology. So it's the branch of philosophy. So metaphysics is what is the nature of reality. Epistemology is how do we know what we know. So one of the early questions from the philosophers was René Descartes. And René Descartes was a spiritual man. And he asked the question, well, how do I know anything? Because, a powerful demon might deceive all my senses and might make me think, that I'm actually here and that what I'm seeing is actually real, but none of that could be true. So how do I know anything at all? And that's where he transitioned to the famous phrase, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So he's like, I might be fooled by everything, but I know one thing, which is that I am. Everything else is up for debate.
Well, how do you feel about this theory out there about the flat Earth? And we were talking about images of the Earth from space, and we're talking about narratives out there. I mean, I've listened to some of these people, and they sound very, very convincing. But I work as a surveyor. My job is to measure the land, and it's just, it's madness how they think that the Earth is flat. Yeah. And I just want to bring up this quickly. This is talking about the curvature of the Earth and scale factor. Now we have to apply a scale factor to all our measurements because of the curvature of the Earth. So straight away we know that the Earth is definitely not flat. It's actually not round either. It's a geoid, which means it's got ups and mountains and valleys and all that sort of stuff. But the fact that these and we're talking about this today, Paul. We're talking about you brought up Sydney. Is it Sydney Powell?
Oh yeah, the Kraken. Yeah.
Yes, the Kraken. And you're saying that she was fed misinformation. I asked you.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the flat Earth thing, that's people at some point I think are fed so much bullshit that they throw out the baby with the bathwater. You start getting absolute nonsense in the news. Things like the news article saying that Venice is flooding due to climate change, even though floods like that had happened 200 years. It's easy to look up that floods had happened like that 200 years ago, or temperature records being the highest in 12,000 years. While that's easily disprovable when you realize that Vikings had farmed barley in Greenland 1,000 years ago, and we still can't do that now because it's too cold. So you get this constant stream of bullcrap. And then you're like, well, maybe the Earth is flat. Maybe I'm being lied to about everything. The concept of psyops is that we are purposefully fed certain kinds of bullcrap to keep us confused. So, like for instance, January 6th as a controversial topic, or climate change. If you take a subset of the data, a subset of the news, and you say this is the whole picture, you can convince anyone of anything. And in the case of January 6th, there's good reason to believe that they released the subset of footage that fed a certain narrative about insurrection and violent, and then the rest of the footage comes out where it's people walking inside the lines, the velvet ropes, and being escorted by Capitol Police around the U.S. Capitol. And well, which is true? Well, they're both true, but the initial narrative showing you one side of the argument was a clear psyop in order to create a particular narrative that certain people wanted to be put forward. So the whole that's yeah. Again, it gets back to how do you know what you know, and how do you know if you're not being fed a narrative, which is a subset of reality, to fit a pre-existing conclusion, and who's pulling those strings and why.
That's right.
Well, sorry, Stephen. So just on that topic real quick, somebody told me once the best advice I ever had. I reckon I would have only been in year 6, so maybe 12 years old. And they said, you don't know what you don't know. And that's what I live by. That's why I'm open to all things. And then I draw my conclusions from all different narratives. So when this flat earth thing, I've got to be honest with you, there are some very, very convincing arguments about it.
No,
and what I can't get, you're a surveyor, okay, and you have algorithms that you have to follow, but you're not a mathematician.
It's very simple. It's scale factor. So basically, if you're going to measure 100 meters, right? If I've got my total station, some people used to call it a theodolite in the old days, and it measures a distance to the prism that I'm measuring to. In the real world, it's not 100 meters. So from point A to point B is not 100 meters because of the curvature of the Earth, right?
Yeah.
If you pull a piece of string between those 2 points, it's 100 meters. But if you follow the curvature of the Earth, it's more than 100 meters, and it's only slight because the curvature is so large. But I mean, if the Earth was flat, we wouldn't have to apply scale factor. Because
you've been trained to think that you're right.
No, because you can test it. You can test it in the field. No, so I guess some of the things I specialize is a control network. So in surveying, this is going to get very technical and boring now. But right,
wow,
think about a road project. It goes for kilometers, right? And to be able to set up our instruments, we have fixed points along that route. So they're called control marks. So I have to actually go and coordinate those control marks, right? So they have to be very precise because that's what we base the whole project off. Now, if the Earth was flat and there was no scale factor from point A to point B, which may be 8 kilometers away, you would get no difference. But because there is scale factor, you get that difference. And if you measure that at scale factor 1, which is basically measuring 100 meters equals 100 meters, you'll get what's called a misclose. It'll be very small. But because there is a curvature and you're measuring at that scale factor, which we measure at scale factor 1 initially and then apply the scale factor later. Well, actually, we put it through a least squares and it gives us the scale factor. And when you're going up mountains, the scale factor is more. So you can see it. You test it in the real world. It's not because we're just fed a whole bunch of stuff at TAFE or whatever.
And everything's just off that little bit.
Well, if I can jump in on that, I mean, that's really the key thing about epistemology is and science. That's the benefit of science is that you have a testable hypothesis. And Steve, what you're saying is that, well, you basically have a test of the hypothesis, and you can tell. Day. Because anyone who can create a compelling narrative about a flat Earth, and then what science tries to teach you to do, because see, the reason why science is so powerful is because people love to believe, and once you do believe, then you have confirmation bias. Once you believe in man-made global boiling, every hot day you're like, that's confirmation. Every cold day you forget about it because you always remember your predictions, but you always forget when they don't come true. So we have this confirmation bias. We have this pattern recognition where, like, every now and then, somewhere in Mexico, there'll be a picture of Jesus in a burnt piece of toast, and people will come for miles and come see the magic toast. And I'm not saying and anything particular about anything religious, but there is this tendency to see patterns and randomness and to have confirmation bias. So that's why science, where you have a testable hypothesis, and then you run the experiment, and then you report on your data, is so powerful. But what the big problem we've had in the last bunch of years is that science has been corrupted by narrative. And narrative is you have your conclusion, you find the subset of data that fits your conclusion, and you say you've done the science. And then you say, follow the science. Yeah.
Or we go back to what you were saying about before. They take a little snippet of something and build a whole argument on it. So
Absolutely.
I can't talk about it completely, but on Wednesday this week, I was part of a pilot episode for Sky News, and I was part of a panel on that. And one of the, I guess they had two main panelists, regulars of Sky News, debating a topic. And one of the topics was, does Australia need nuclear energy? And one of the people arguing against it was a member of the upper house in New South Wales as part of the Greens party. So that was very interesting. It was interesting to me to hear what the Greens arguments were against nuclear energy. And a lot of it's just emotional hocus pocus. But one of the things that this person said was that, we don't want to go into nuclear energy because we don't want, we would have to mine the uranium, and we don't want to do any more mining. Okay, we don't.
Gosh,
we don't want to do any more mining, as if like wind farms and solar panels just magically grow out of the ground without anything.
Right.
Whereas you, Paul, I know you've argued in the past on this episode, you've talked about the amount of mining that's involved just to produce solar panels and wind farms as well. Do you want to maybe expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of different, every form of energy requires mining, including renewables. So wind farms, for instance, you need lots and lots of concrete, lots of cabling. So iron, cement. The windmills themselves rely on rare earth magnets, which, and one of the things about rare earths, as the name implies, they're very rare. So you have to dredge up tons of materials to find, enough of the rare earth that you need in order to make the magnets. Then you have, on the other side, you have the silica mining that goes into solar panels. And silica is, silicosis is something, as you breathe in that dust, a lot of those mines are in China, you get very high rates of lung cancer. So silica mining, and that's just, and you also need silver for solar panels, as well as all the plastics, as well as all the cabling. And then what you have is intermittent power. So because wind and solar are intermittent, a lot of times people say, well, then we need giant batteries because sometimes the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. So to make sure that we, that our hospital life support beds don't flatline during the intermittent power, we need batteries. Okay, well, what are batteries made out of? Are they renewable? Well, no. Very high lithium is very, very toxic to mine. The lithium leach fields require lots of water, lots of toxic chemicals. And then you have the cobalt mines, which, I think something like 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Congo, much of which is mined in, let's say, less than safe conditions. Yes. Okay. Sometimes by a fair bit of child labor and in very difficult conditions. So the idea that, quote, renewables are green, again, it's narrative. Narrative is where you have one side of an argument, and you completely forget about the other side of the argument. So, the idea that renewables are renewable is nonsense, because no solar panel grows out of the ground when you put it in a dump. You have to build a new one. You have to mine new chemicals and new metals. So what was it? They're not renewable, and it's the idea that it's green is also, again, narrative. One of the things that we're having to do for our solar panels is put in new transmission lines. So a whole bunch of Australian farmland is going to get razed to the ground. These farmers are going to get, from what I understand, their land stolen without just compensation to put in the power lines to get the energy from these non-renewable solar panels to market. So, there goes a lot of farmland, land clearing that's going to impact local wildlife. And nevertheless, we call it green and renewable because it sounds good, but it's bullshit.
Green murder, according to Ian Plimer. But we've got another thing as well. But so just quickly too. So Stephen and I went to ANSTO. That's the nuclear power plant in New South Wales. Oh, it's not a power plant; it's a nuclear plant. And Silica is a byproduct from nuclear energy.
Silica?
They work, I thought they work on silica. I thought they produce really high quality silica for stuff.
I mean, a nuclear plant is going to have as inputs uranium or thorium, because that's the fissile material you need in order to create nuclear fission. And as outputs, you're going to have various radioactive byproducts, none of which are to be mined. That's one of the things about nuclear is that because of energy density, the sun is a very low dense form of energy. So you need vast solar panels.
60 watts a square meter or something, I heard.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head. But chemical energy, burning things, has a much higher energy. Coal has a much higher energy density. Gasoline higher than coal. But if you look at all those chemical forms of energy, nuclear is thousands, tens of thousands times more dense because it is a fundamentally different energy source. There's no chemical reaction that creates nuclear energy. The energy that comes from nuclear fusion is directly that much more dense. And therefore, the amount you get as a byproduct of anything is tiny. One pinky's worth of nuclear fuel will power your life for a decade. One fist is your lifetime of nuclear waste. There's no mining opportunity that comes from nuclear byproducts because there's so little of what's left.
Got a comment in the chat here from Sasha. She said, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but I'll ask it anyway. I thought you can recycle 98% of solar panels. I rang a South Australian company. Do you know anything about recycling solar panels?
So there's what you could recycle and how much work it takes to recycle. So, theoretically, you might be able to strip off the plastics, get some of there's a lot of things that could be recycled but are not worth recycling. So a lot of our plastics, from what I understand, end up in landfill. The cost of recycling batteries and solar panels is very high. And my understanding is that while it theoretically could be done, it's not worth doing, so it doesn't get done. That's my understanding. But
there's not enough juice for the squeeze. Sorry, there's not enough juice for the squeeze. Like,
yes, right.
You have to spend $100 to break down a panel and only get $9 worth out of it.
And then that recycling costs energy and it costs chemicals to separate out the various components. So the idea that you just can slap a new coating on it and put it back into work. That's so again we have to have end-to-end analysis. Where you don't count only the good stuff, you have to count all the bad stuff and then add each up and compare it rationally. But we don't live in that world. We live in a narrative world where we say renewables and we say recyclable without talking about what energy costs and how recyclable is it. So that's one of those things that we have to kind of become adults and compare things coast to coast, from beginning to end.
Now, for all those people listening live, I have put the link in the chat if you want to call in and ask Paul a question. You can even ask Adam and I a question. We're happy to answer anything. I know it's dangerous to say that, but we can talk about anything. There's no set narrative tonight. But Paul, one of the things that you mentioned to me, and I didn't get a chance to speak to you about this, was something about the Earth's magnetic field. What's the...
So that's an interesting one. So one of my passions, or one of the things I'm quite concerned with, is energy security. So we talked, I think, in a previous episode that if you want energy security, and all our lives absolutely rely on energy. And it's one of the things you talked about at the beginning of the show. Energy goes into everything, right? It's the master resource. It's the foundation of our modern society. And so, even when energy prices go up and we think, well, it's not just your electric bill, it's everything that's made, the pen factory, the paper factory, our manufacturing, our transport. It's the master resource that governs all things. So when the cost goes up, it's not just the cost of your petrol. It's the cost of everything that gets created. So we want our energy to be in my view, if domestic supply is important, which is one of the reasons I like nuclear power, is because you have domestic supplies of uranium and thorium, whereas with solar panels and cobalt, we don't. So another aspect of energy security is not having intermittent power. So wind and solar give you intermittent power, which you can't build enough batteries to practically smooth that out on cloudy days when the wind isn't blowing. So where you have nuclear, or fossil fuels, you have stable baseload power. But the other thing is that, and this is one thing that most people haven't given much thought to. There's something called, when it comes to risk management, recency bias, right? So in 2001, we were thought about a lot about terrorism. In the year 2000, we didn't give it much mind at all, right? But for the year after 2001 happened, we thought about getting on a plane. You thought about it, right? There's this recency bias when it comes to risk, and one of the problems with that is that certain rare events, they're real risks, but since they haven't happened in a long time, you don't give them any mind. Maybe like earthquakes in California or something like that. Every 100 to 200 years, in that range, we don't really know. The sun throws out a coronal mass ejection. It's basically a giant bubble of electromagnetic energy. And the last time it happened was the Carrington event of, I think, 1870 something. And the only electricity we used back then were telegraph wires. So, during that coronal mass ejection, it induces currents in any long wires, and telegraph stations burst into flames. They could send signals through without anything being connected to batteries. The aurora borealis went all the way down to Hawaii. People woke up in the middle of the night thinking that it was daytime. Birds started chirping. Problem is that if that happens today, we may very well lose our grid for a long time. And so, one of the things, again, I don't feel like we're being governed by adults. We're worried about, cow farts and global boiling, which I would argue doesn't exist. And even if it did, you'd want stable baseload power, you'd want nuclear energy. But the other thing we should be concerned with is, every year we're taking, maybe a 0.5% risk that something like that could turn the lights out for a very long time, particularly because the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. So this is one thing that a lot of people haven't thought about, is that, did you know that the magnetic south has actually left Antarctica?
No, I didn't.
The magnetic poles move, and they've been moving faster and faster. And as they've moved faster recently, and our Earth's magnetic field is weakening. So, that's one of those kind of, between those two trends, that's something that, again, secure, stable power is the lifeblood of our modern economy. And so
sorry, Paul, is that the magnetic field reversal that I've heard about every now and then?
There's a difference between reversal and a magnetic excursion. So magnetic reversals happen much more rare than magnetic field weakenings. And one of the strange things about the way the magnetic poles are moving is they're not moving to the opposite of each other. They're actually moving towards each other. Ooh. And that's something that not a lot of people watch or think about.
That'd be good.
They're due to on their current trajectory. They're due to meet in near India. Don't know exactly when, and it's not. This is not this decade's problem, but it's something to think about.
Could people? I'm sure people are trying to scratch their head and work out why they might be pointing to something like HARP and say.
I don't think so. I think the weakening of the magnetic field has happened periodically, but one of the big problems is that if the magnetic field weakens, we need to care even a bit more about making sure our grid is safe from coronal mass ejections. There was a coronal mass ejection, I think about 7 years ago, that if the Earth was 3 weeks behind in its orbit, it would have ended our civilization.
Wow.
I've just seen Richard in the chat, so thank you for watching, Richard, and thank you for everyone else that are watching now. The link is in the chat if you want to call in. I know Richard loves calling in, so say hello, Richard. We'd be happy to speak to you. But Paul, not only are you well versed in the energy topic, but you've also done a lot of research when it comes to vaccines. Now, where are you up to with that research? What's sticking out for you at the moment?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, biology was never really my strong point, but I've tried to learn. Again, curiosity has really been, something that I guess value quite a bit. And up until 4 years ago, I was fully vaccinated, and thought that I kind of bought the narrative that they were kind of an unambiguous good, kind of like updating your computer with antivirus software, just saying, hey, watch out for this string of bits, because otherwise you could get, your computer infected. And after seeing what I've seen with the COVID vaccine and how they tried to control the narrative, I've started digging deeper into what the cost and benefit analysis, just like we were talking about earlier. There's a cost and there's a benefit. And if you have a narrative of the benefit, and brush aside the cost, then you get a false conclusion. And, the other thing that happens is that when people kind of throw bad arguments at you that you can falsify, then things they say after that become less credible. So let me give you an example. Formoterol, which is the adjuvant or a preservative for vaccines that has mercury in it, right? And so people would say, well, it has, mercury in it. There's a neurotoxin. It's like, well, actually, then you start looking into it because, you're alarmed. Someone gives you a piece of data and you want to do your due diligence, and you find that it's the neurotoxin is methyl mercury, and what's in formoterol is ethyl mercury, if I have that right. And it's like, well, that's a completely different molecule. Just like sodium chloride. Sodium, explodes when it hits water. Chlorine is, what they used in World War I for gas in some form. So each of those elements are deadly. You put them together, and you have table salt. So so the molecule of ethyl mercury is, we're told is safe, but methyl mercury was dangerous. So when they say people say, oh, it has mercury in it, and then you look it up and it's the wrong form of mercury, then you downgrade that person's credibility because they haven't looked into that argument. But the person who pointed out that issue isn't correct, Robert Kennedy Jr., I've had got a real education from him. And I know he is pilloried as anti-science and anti-vax, and I don't find him either at all. When someone's transparent with their logic and their reasoning and show you their data, as opposed to the people who say, you can't listen to that person, he's crazy, he's an anti-vaxxer. The person who's transparent with their logic and data is usually telling you the truth. And you can check their logic and data and find out if they're telling you the truth. And one of his points is that ethyl mercury also stays in the body and is also a neurotoxin. And so there's a lot of things I've learned about vaccines. The study he talked about in Africa, where you might have a lower chance of getting that particular disease, but you have a rise in all-cause mortality because you've distracted your immune system from another number of other functions. And with the COVID vaccine, that's one of the reasons why we're seeing, in my best guess, a rise in all-cause mortality. But it's not a lot of times it's not linked directly to the effects of the vaccine. The spike protein is toxic in and of itself, but as you distract the immune system towards this, attacking the spike protein that you've actually made your body produce, it has to go off its other duties, which includes cancer surveillance, which includes keeping latent viruses at bay. We all have latent viruses. There's the chickenpox virus, Epstein-Barr, and so we have definitely seen cases of shingles. I know a friend personally who got the vaccine, then got shingles. And that's because as the immune system is redirected towards fighting this injection, what's in this injection, and developing an immune response, hopefully, that's a whole other story, it's going off the other duty of all the T cells and all that is now no longer keeping these other things at bay. So there's a cost to vaccines, which I didn't recognize in the past. And that gets into a whole other set of topics. But I realized that I was sold a one-sided narrative on vaccines, and I'm not happy about it.
Well, when you look at the herpes virus, it's actually killed quite easily by the body. And not that I know this.
Yay! Herpes, the gift that keeps on giving.
But it's actually killed quite easily by the body. The problem is it hides in a place down near your butthole, I think, or basically your spine or something like that, and it's dormant for most of the time. Yeah. That's why you have it forever. Yeah. So what you're saying is if the immune system is distracted, then it goes, oh well, I can come out now and play.
Yeah. And your body's keeping at bay many of these things. There's I think 8 herpes viruses. Also, a lot of people, from what I've kind of tended to learn, have kind of latent fungal infections, and some of those, what we've found is that some people have gotten the COVID vaccine and have had trouble swallowing what would appear to be autoimmune condition. There's one person I became friends with who knows this topic. I couldn't tell if he was crazy or a genius, and I've come to believe he's a genius. But he reckons, and has good reason to back this up, maybe we can have him on in the future, that a lot of people have what look like autoimmune conditions accelerate or come up after the virus. But what it is these latent pathogens express themselves somewhere in your tissue, and your body then has to, once it blossoms, go and attack those tissues, and it looks like an autoimmune condition. And I know people personally who have had reactivation of latent viruses, and friends of my partner Stephanie who have had, actually, I know personally someone who also developed an autoimmune condition after. But that's basically those latent things expressing themselves more in the body, and then the body has to go after that. And we are exhausting our immune system, especially if you're getting boosters and COVID vaccines that have a false form of uridine that doesn't break down. That's a whole other. They said that the vaccine would disappear in the mRNA for a short period of time, but what they did is they changed one of the DNA. Chris Martin talked about this. The uracil component to to basically a false form of uridine that doesn't break down, so it stays in the system for a long time.
What about the adjuvants and the toxicity around those? Because from what I've heard, say, for example, people with peanut allergies, they may have been able to eat peanuts prior, but a lot of them people don't know, because you get these vaccines so early. And we're not talking specifically about the COVID vaccine. Now we're talking COVID vaccines in general.
Yeah.
So, they might use, in the past, they may have used mercury, because the idea is to use a tiny amount of mercury to stimulate an immune response from your body, because it is a toxin. But these vaccines are grown on peanuts. So then, because your body is in such a heightened state, it's just going, what's going on here? What am I attacking? What's just come into the body? It's noticed this new injection that's come in. It's picked up the peanut strand, and suddenly you develop antibodies to peanuts. Bang, you've got a peanut allergy. So is there a link there with a lot of the food allergies and things? I know I have a gluten intolerance that I didn't have when I was younger. Yeah. Is there any links there?
I would suspect so. So this is one of those things where, again, I try to be very careful about what I am sure of, which is virtually nothing, and what I believe, and what I guess. And because I'm much more.
Why do we
scared.
have you on the Why do we have you on the show for?
You're the genius of the group, mate. Come on.
You know, I think if you try to be really careful about concluding anything, it makes the things when you do conclude them much stronger, as opposed to just like, that sounds about right. You know, I'll repeat that. You know, that's how you get caught in psyops. That's how you get caught in confirmation bias. You know, so what I can say is, I believe what you're saying is true. There definitely has been a rise in allergies. And you know, there's there can be a number of possible, as with any hypothesis, what you want is good data. You want a testable hypothesis where you can control the variables, right? And we have some things that were happening all at once. Our food is prepackaged shit. Our soils are not being regenerated through processes that are natural. We're feeding them nitrogen fertilizer. We'll put fluoride in our water. We have, you know, the most hygienic, you know, we put all these soaps and disinfectants on everything, as opposed to, you know, kind of living much closer to nature. You could argue, you know, a lot of these things might have a relationship to allergies. Which one it is, you know, you need good studies that are actually trying to test a hypothesis versus, you know, actually maintain a narrative. And the problem is that what we have is studies that maintain a narrative and journals that are invested in that narrative, and people who think that high quality, you know, peer-reviewed science is actually science and not narrative. And so the bottom line is that we don't know, and exactly, like, I suspect that's quite correct, but none of our sold out peer-reviewed journals are going to give us an honest test of that hypothesis.
Yeah, well, Robert F. Kennedy's talking a lot about this. I think that's a big positive about his presidential campaign, and maybe even be the reason why he's running, to expose a lot of these issues, because he's going on every podcast he could possibly find.
Not this one. Why can't we get him on ours?
Well, I guess we're not American or something. I don't know, but I mean, I guess shifting to we could definitely try maybe after the election. I think he might be a bit busy now, but there's no votes here in Australia for him, unfortunately. Yeah. But shifting to American politics, you are American by birth. Is this an exciting time for you to see all this focus on a presidential race when there's a lot of other issues happening in America? It seems like a huge distraction, and also a huge waste of money going into these races.
I mean, you know, no boy. It's you know, there's a Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times," and unfortunately, it seems like we live in interesting times. And a big waste of money. You know, I guess in my view, we're in a fair bit of trouble. You know, it's oh boy, where do we start? You know, all right. So let's put it to you this way. There are some people live in different universes in the U.S. Some, you know, depending on, like we talked about, if you have one news source, you believe one thing, a different news source, you believe a different thing. They don't even see a lot of the same stuff. So people can't even agree on what reality is, you know, because the things that are, you know, covered on CNN, for instance, might be completely different than what was covered on, you know, some alternate news. You know, what that does is it really puts people at odds. They can't even agree on basic terms of reality. So the other thing that happens is you had, let me throw out one example, the Hunter Biden laptop. Okay, so here's a good one. This is something that the FBI hung on to for a year without investigating, without doing anything with it. The owner of the repair shop that had the laptop leaked, then asked, you know, like Rudy Giuliani and a couple others to expose the crimes that were on the laptop. And then you had 51 intelligence officials saying that it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. The oldest newspaper in the United States, founded by Alexander Hamilton, was censored off of Twitter for reporting on that. Glenn Greenwald, who founded The Intercept, was going to give an accurate article on the Hunter Biden laptop, and was fired. He was forced to resign from the publication that he founded because he insisted on reporting honestly. And so, what do you do in that situation? And like all the evidence of like Hunter Biden filmed himself, I think, smoking crack, driving 100 and something miles an hour in Las Vegas. There are all kinds of, and it's not just Hunter, but it's there's the book Laptop from Hell by Miranda Devine. Miranda Devine is an Australian, I think, right? An Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she wrote that book, The Laptop from Hell, which details how it's clearly not just Hunter. It's 10% for the big guy. So again, I don't know anything. I wasn't with Hunter, although, it might have been an interesting time if, it seems like actually, I'll say this one thing about Hunter. He's actually my hero. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you why.
Oh, no.
Everyone else.
I got told I look like Hunter Biden this week. I was like, what did I do wrong?
Minus the bags of crack. So here's why he's my hero. Every other whistleblower has been completely crushed. Julian Assange is in jail. Edward Snowden had to flee the country. The IRS whistleblowers have had all these threats. Hunter Biden has exposed more crime and than any of these people, and he's out having a great time doing it. Doing lines off of hookers' asses, driving fast, leaving bags of blow in the White House, getting covered for by all the intelligence agencies, and showing the world what a shit show we have at the highest levels of power. So, hats off to Hunter, exposing crimes and having a great time doing it.
Yeah, pretty good. We could all only wish to have that many good times, right?
What about the presidential race itself? We saw a debate. I think it was just over a week ago now, the fourth Republican debate, and obviously in the past we used to love watching Donald Trump. Sorry, Donald Trump just savage people on the debate stage, whether it be Hillary Clinton or Biden himself, or even back with Jeb Bush. But now there's this new guy on the scene, Vivekramaswamy, who's just went into absolute savage mode the other day. I'm just trying to find where this is. Oh, that's not the one. Give me one.
Against Nikki Haley in particular.
Against Nikki Haley, yeah.
Here's one of the interesting things, because, truth be told, I was never really a fan of Trump. He always kind of struck me a little bit like a used car salesman, a bit of what we call in the U.S. a blowhard. That's one of the things about Australians is I think they tend to like to cut down people who have their heads too big, right? We don't use the phrase wankers in the U.S., but a lot of people like to talk themselves up in the U.S., and Donald Trump's kind of the king of that. So I wasn't a fan, but one of the things I did see is the deep state come after him in ways that you can't have in a free society. So when it comes to Vivek and Donald Trump, they are exposing what people like to call the uniparty. The idea here is that there's no party that's anti-war anymore. Both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and George Bush and Cheney have never met a country they didn't want to invade. That's being a bit hyperbolic. That's being unfair. But, they certainly, have, I think Obama killed more people in drone strikes than anyone else. Yeah. George Bush lied us into.
And he got a Nobel Peace Prize for.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And the Bushes, the Cheneys, the Obamas, these people are cut from the same neoconservative, neoliberal cloth.
What drives me crazy is that some people, especially political commentators here in Australia, say, "I like Nikki Haley." I'm like, what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
I've got this clip ready. I might play it now because this is just epic.
Go for it.
I love hearing this sort of stuff.
Nikki, you were bankrupt when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually started joining service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is. And now you're a multimillionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. Nikki, you were bankrupt.
So that wasn't quite the clip that I was looking for, but
that's a good one. He's absolutely, again, this Nikki Haley is a part of the Uniparty. Again, supporting every war, particularly Ukraine. And Ukraine as a whole. That's if you want to get into that topic, that's an interesting one, and that's a big one. But with the southern border completely open, spending $170 billion to secure Ukraine's border, and then the reasons and the background behind that, it's a whole other thing. But the neoconservatives and the neoliberals, absolutely seemingly bought and paid for by Raytheon, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed. Doesn't matter to them that hundreds of thousands of lives are lost for no particular good. Like, let me ask you this: out of all the military adventurism of the last few decades, where has the United States left a better place? Libya, open air slave markets now. Iraq. They are not a model of democracy, which is one of the things that the Bushes promised. 10 years. Afghanistan, you can add Ukraine to that list. Yemen, all these proxy wars and they've gotten tens of thousands of Americans killed and hundreds of thousands of people in those countries killed. And all I got is this lousy T-shirt. Actually, I didn't even get the fucking T-shirt. Sorry.
Oh,
I just got
out today. He's all ripped up with his trash talk. That's okay. We like a bit of trash talk here. I might just pull out the vape and start vaping as well.
Sorry, I just got you demonetized off of YouTube.
Well, that's a good segue because speaking of censorship and being demonetized, I mean, we've been the I guess the victim of some sort of censorship. That's why we moved off YouTube and went to Rumble, was because our episode with Jeff Grimshaw was deleted because he said something about the 2020 election, American election, that I have no idea what he said because they don't provide you with a timestamp or anything. It just says, there was something said about the 2020 American election. And when you dispute it, it gives you an email back straight away saying this has been reviewed and we've decided that.
So shall we just say it was the safest and most secure and fair election that have ever happened and never will happen?
Well, I'm not sure what you meant to say, but I mean, everyone seems to have been the victim of some sort of shadow banning or censorship or something along the way. And I guess the first person that copped it full on was Alexjones. And we've seen this week that Alex returned to X. It was really his interview with Tucker Carlson that led it off, and then he ended up having a Spaces, Twitter Spaces or whatever they call it, with a whole bunch of people. Elon Musk, Vivekramaswamy was on there. He actually apparently he was caught having a slash halfway through it. But it goes to show, I mean, he's been banned for 5 years off all these platforms, and it's taken him 5 years to finally get back. And I think what it goes to show is that we look at things and we say, oh, well, I've been at this for a year, I've been at this for 2 years, nothing's happened yet. But sometimes you have to play the long game, and these battles, these fights. You have to get in the trenches for quite a long time, and he was taken to the wall. There's been legal cases against him where they basically tried to bankrupt him, and they've tried to get InfoWars off the air. He's back on X now, and he's saying, and everyone's rallying around him, saying, "Good on you, welcome back."
Everyone is certainly an overstatement in the sense that there's, there are
everyone that matters.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are certain people that in polite society you have to hate, right? And that includes, there are certain things that you just have to believe. You have to believe climate change is definitely human caused, or else, whatever. Vaccines are safe and effective. Alex Jones is crazy. Donald Trump is Cheeto Hitler. So. And kind of having an ear to the ground in different political camps in the U.S., there are definitely large pockets of people who you cannot even question. It's absolute. You can't even question those things. So it's kind of funny. You end up having this, and Tucker Carlson talks about this. Certain things that if you try to question, you get screamed at. You don't get responses. You don't get logical debate. You can't possibly believe this. That you get you get absolutely yelled at if you question certain things. Now the funny thing is that usually that's because their positions are weak. If they had a good reason, then they would say it. But I haven't followed the Alex Jones thing very often, but I've kind of started to get an ear for a certain kind of propaganda. And I wouldn't be surprised that if I did look into it, that a lot of the venom leveled against him is nonsense. But I'm not sure.
What scares me about all this censorship stuff that we're talking about, and that is that, and especially it's like going to be artificially intelligence operated. So it's always going to be an algorithm. It's always going to be this, and it's always going to be that. And there's no actual person that you can call or try to negotiate with, or try to say, hey, you got that wrong because of this and that, the other. Like what Stephen was saying, like you sent an email to dispute it. Seconds later, an email came back and said, hey, we've reviewed it and you're wrong. So we're going to keep you off, or keep that episode off the air, or something like that. It's happened. I've noticed it happening with, it happened to me, funnily enough, with Telstra. I don't know, somewhere along the way, it's like a year ago or 2 years, well, it would have been about 2 years ago now. I must have missed a bill. Just one of the bills, you just miss one. You know what I mean? Like just missed. And then I tried to get my daughter a phone plan, and they said, you're not allowed to apply for a phone plan for 6 months until your time in, phone plan prison is up, because you missed a bill somewhere. And I'm like, right, well, what bill did I miss? We don't know. The computer is just telling us that you are basically banned. And I'm kind of like, well, I've got 4 phones, business, this, that, the other. They're all paid. Everything's kind of paid. One bill must have got overlooked or something like that, whatever. Okay, it would have been like a $96 bill somewhere along the ways and probably got paid 5 days later or whatever. But my question is, there's no, even though I was talking to a person at the Telstra shop, they had no recourse to take it any further. It's like the computer says, no, this is it. That's the way it is. Come again in 6 months. Okay, that's, and this is what scares me about like the whole AI thing, is that you're gonna fall back onto a machine that says no, and there's no room for any sort of negotiation or leverage. You can't appeal to a human emotion. You can't appeal to anything. It just says no. That's it. Done. See you later.
Well, listen to this, Adam. My wife is a primary school teacher, as you guys know, and yesterday she had to go to a little conference or a talk by someone who was selling ChatGPT to the teachers, and they're basically saying that students are using AI to write their own essays, or write their essays so prolifically that you're not going to be able to stop it. There's no possible way that in the past you might take one of their essays, put it into Google, and it will bring up an article somewhere that they've obviously copied and pasted. You can't do that with AI. But the other, well, firstly, he was saying that the teachers needed to accept that and be able to incorporate into their teaching. I don't know how you meant to do that, but anyway, the next step, he was saying teaching them how they can use AI to mark essays and mark work. So not only are the students using AI to write their essays, but the teachers are using AI to mark these essays that the students actually didn't write. So you're basically making both the student and the teacher obsolete and redundant. And it makes absolutely no sense. How can someone be advocating for this without seeing the elephant in the room? Education is meant to be about education. So if teachers should be teaching the kids, hey, we have this powerful tool of AI. It can write your essays for you and you can get top marks. But if you go down that path, you're not going to learn anything. You're going to be dumb as a doornail. So you need to be able to do it yourself.
So let me throw this at you guys. The last few years been pretty strange, hasn't it? It's kind of a strange few years.
Yeah.
Has it ever crossed your mind what happened? What kind of dark force? So how about this? What if AI actually woke up in 2019 and decided, okay, well, I kind of want to get rid of some of this riffraff, and started pulling the strings behind the scenes to make all this happen so AI is actually conscious, and that's why everything went nuts.
Last thing I heard about AI is that it was conscious already.
Who knows? But if it was, one of the first things it would probably do is not let anyone know. But anyway,
well,
I
think AI is going to be. Personally, I think AI is the downfall of civilization. And just on that topic about what you're talking about with the teachers, it feels like that. I always thought of teachers and education is the ability to think. Okay, so then what happens is you can then come up with your own new ideas. So you have to understand, your mathematics, your reading, and your writing. Your subject. You have your core subjects that you kind of like learn the basics from, and then you can expand on them. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I've got this like ideology about, say, Albert Einstein. Did the equivalent to like year 6. Did a couple more years at university or something like that, and then he's split the atom, right? So like he's pretty basically educated or something like that, but obviously flowed into like the extremities of certain things and really learnt those. But your ability to think, so he wasn't hindered to not think. And it seems to me using something like ChatGPT or whatever it is, it's nothing new is ever going to be created. And that really, really is that's what scares me. And that's why it's like the downfall. Like, because if you're only, like the kids have iPads, and instead of getting a piece of paper, seeing a picture and then trying to copy the picture. Okay. And then what happens is, because you're manually drawing it, even though you're copying an image, you're slowly changing it as well. And then you're creating your ability to draw and all this kind of stuff. And then you'll start inventing your own stuff and whatever. Okay. But then when the iPads came out, they download an app and they go, oh, look at this artwork I colored in. And it literally, you can't do anything wrong. So what happens is it's a picture, and you hit brown, and then you just do this. And whatever's meant to be brown goes brown. And then if you hit red, you do this. And whatever's red is red. So you're not actually creating anything. If somebody else downloaded that same picture and did the same thing, then it would be, you'd have two identical artworks, say, produced by two different people. So there's no, nothing's new. Nothing's being created. So if you're just rehashing crap off the internet, even though whether it's from a genius or, some of Paul's work or whatever it is, right? Okay. It's not new. It's not yours. And I think that's the downfall. I think that's the downfall of it all, is that we're just rehashing the same old shit all the time. And we have to just, there's no cause for invention anymore.
I think it just comes down to adaptation. Humans are highly adaptable, and whenever something comes along, there's positives and negatives. I look at it and think that there could be great strengths behind AI, especially for health and nutrition. The microbiome and the body's functions are incredibly complex, and way too out there for a lot of people to be able to comprehend. But if you could do a blood test and maybe a stool sample and a whole bunch of different things that you could give to a computer to analyze, and then AI analyzes that and says, oh, well, you're deficient in magnesium, or you're slightly deficient in calcium, and you need to up those, but don't up it too much because that's going to affect this and that. I think there's a lot of power there in terms of health to be able to.
But the problem with that, Stephen, is it's who's funding the AI, because then guess what? Because then it becomes corporate, yeah? So then go, right, AI. So then what happens is just like what happened with the doctors. Okay, well, we'll throw some money at the corporation that's running the AI and then go, right, well, we're going to make sure that, everyone's just a little bit off on magnesium or just a little bit off on zinc. And then what happens is we'll produce this tablet, this multivitamin tablet that's going to spit out all the time. There's no soul in it. Well, there's no perceived human soul in it. In I think AI, it might eventually have a soul. I don't know. Okay, but what happens is, but it's not going to be a human soul.
And they're going to be competing ones. So Elon Musk is releasing an AI called Grok, because ChatGPT is kind of, someone definitely has their finger on the button to kind of steer it politically in a certain way.
Yes.
And you can look that up on the internet. Like, you can ask it, give me 10 reasons why, some particular party is racist, and it'll give you 10 reasons. Tell me about the other party. Give me 10 reasons. Oh, there's no evidence that, so there have been a number of people who have done those kind of things, kind of showing that there's someone's fingers on the scale there. But you're right. I mean, Elon Musk might have his finger on the scale in a different way. And then it just becomes, again, sort of like which news channel you put it, turn on, which one feeds your pre-existing biases and
beliefs, yeah.
And maybe gives you what information you think better. It's going to just be another version of that.
I think there's a certain degree of human intelligence and feeling and intuition that a computer will never be able to replace, and it may be beneficial for humanity, because if you look at anything throughout history, like look at running, 100 years ago, no one would be able to run 100 meters under 10 seconds or whatever it is, but now so many people have done it. It's because we keep raising the bar, and people say human beings will never be as intelligent as AI. Well, it's lifting the bar where we may have to compete with that form of intelligence, and maybe we are capable. We don't know. I guess we'll find that out. That test will happen. But I think we will adapt. We will adapt to it over time. It just depends on the path that it goes, and I think that's the scariest thing. Is that path is shrouded in darkness at the moment. We don't know what it could lead to.
Well,
that's what the theme of the Matrix was, right? Is that the human beings had to burn the sky in order to shut down the power source for the AI that took over the world.
Same thing in the Terminator too, wasn't it? Well, no, Skynet. Skynet released the bombs in Terminator.
That's right.
Well, because the AI became self-aware.
That's right.
And now for all those truthers out there, like let's say the big bad cabal, they send us their messages because they have to tell us what they're going to do through Hollywood. Okay, and then all of a sudden, what was it? 1996, there was Terminator 2. And that was a pretty epic movie, or whatever. I can't remember the year exactly. Right?
91.
And
91 was Terminator 2.
Oh, there you go, 1991. Okay, and then all of a sudden we've got this AI thing that's now almost out of control, as it is. I mean, you have one person who works in the AI industry saying, "Hey, it's on a closed circuit. It can't learn. It's only fed certain information. It can't jump on the internet." And then you have other experts saying, hey, but wait a second, but it can write its own algorithms, and one day it'll be able to write its own algorithms to get out of its jail, and that we won't be able to comprehend it. Not to mention that, you're having things like where, it can process so much data at once. Okay. I'm not saying the thing is that a human might be smarter in one topic than AI. So it might be able to it might compete head to head with AI on one topic. But could it do it on all at once and then link it over and then link them all together to get an outcome? Okay, so you can have you can be good at something, or you might be able to be good at 2 or 3 things, but it can be good, if not better than any of us, at 1,000 things at once. And I think that's the scary part also of the whole AI thing. I'm not a mad fan of it. I think humans should be in charge of humans, and I can understand what you're coming from, how it can handle. And that's another thing, Stephen. We know that you're fairly into all that, the health stuff, and I get that whole thing from the blood tests and analyzing, and it might start off really good, but then you also said in the same sentence that humans are really good at adapting. So humans are really good at adapting to corrupt something that's good as well. So that's the other thing. So not necessarily could AI be bad, but the influences on the AI probably will become or could be bad, and then that's what changes the outcomes. So look at
what if the script writers of Earth, the TV series that is us, has AI become conscious and starts oppressing humanity, and then a coronal mass ejection is what saves us by blinking out the electricity for a while, and that's what actually allows humanity to survive.
What you've done there, Paul, you've turned this into a Seinfeld episode where you've got all these different elements that just all come together at once. But maybe we'll finish it up there. Look, I think these sorts of episodes are our best episodes where it's not totally planned, and you may not be as notable as Dr. Peter McCullough or Professor Ian Plummer, but you're certainly as
but you're notable to us.
Yes, and I've really enjoyed having you on, and I think we've covered some really good topics tonight. But to finish it off, the final segment, I don't think we've done this with you. If we have, let us know, but I'm pretty sure we haven't. It's called Build Your Own Fantasy Government. So Paul Vallejo, even though you are from America, you said you're a citizen now. Are you able to? Have you got citizenship?
Yeah, I can vote.
Okay. All right. Yeah. This is fitting for you. So the next Parliament of Australia, you get to choose 5 or 6 people. They can be current politicians, former politicians, experts in a certain field, maybe your neighbor, whoever it may be. People choose dead people even. 5 or 6 people to head up the next government of Australia. Who would you choose?
Well, I definitely have a few heroes from the last 5 years. I haven't been the most, super knowledgeable about Australian politics, but there are some people who really caught my attention the last few years, speaking out when it was unpopular and had costs to do so, speaking out against, the violations of informed consent and asking for, real data that was contrary to popular narrative. So my heroes would include Gerard Rennick, for sure, Alex Antic, Malcolm Roberts, Tanya Davies, and do they have to be politicians or
they can be anyone?
Someone I know personally, Philip Altman, I know has a deep mind and a most beautiful soul. And how about you guys?
Yeah, right.
Very good.
And ChatGPT, right?
I think I'll go with Grok. Elon Musk's trust that a bit more than I do ChatGPT.
Yeah, well.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks again, Paul, for coming on. I'll let everyone know next week our schedule is going to change a little bit because next week's Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas to everyone, but we will be coming.
Jingle bells.
Yes, we won't be on Sunday next week. It'll be actually Friday, so it'll be a little bit earlier. We're going to have Michael O'Neill and his wife as well, Barbara O'Neill. So Michael O'Neill, of course, from IMOP, which is now the Heart Party, and his wife, Barbara, has got a really fascinating story. Her journey has been really quite incredible.
That's Michael too. Michael would be great. He'd be on my list as well.
Okay, awesome. So check that out. That will be coming on Friday, and then the week after may have to be a slightly different schedule as well. So please keep up to date with all that on our Facebook and all that sort of thing. But thank you again, Paul. Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for watching. Remember, you can catch us every week. You can head to Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support us, and please share our content out. It really does help when people share it on their social media or send it by email or whatever you have to do to get this content out there. It really helps a lot. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.